Chapter 4. The Valley of the Wicked. Wicked Man Valley. Under the whip of the man in black, all the bronze-masked men slowly stepped into this reluctant valley, the Valley of the Wicked. Much like Chen Chongchen, the great name of the Wicked Man Valley was known to nearly everyone. This is where the Thousand Island Sea villains are imprisoned, and this group of villains will eventually be sent to the Colosseum to fight to the death. Chen Chongchen's face was ugly to the extreme. Gu Hai, however, was silent, and Gao Xianzi followed behind Gu Hai without uttering a word. "Helm, my lord, what do we do now?" Chen Chongchen was worried. "Be at ease, as we are here. We will be at peace, right now. We're not qualified to say what to do. Let's feel out the situation first," Gu Hai said in a low voice. "Yes," Chen Chongchen said bitterly. At this moment, if Gu Hai wasn't beside him, Chen Chongchen would have despaired. Chen Chongchen knew what would happen to the bronze-masked man. Either he would die in the Colosseum or fight endlessly until he died in battle. As soon as Gu Hai entered the valley, he immediately felt as if he was being watched. Looking carefully, the valley was quite dark and very large, surrounded by a small mound behind a small bunker, but it seemed as if there was a bronze-masked man crouching in 2s and 3s. Although it was impossible to see their faces, but from that pair of eyes, one could see a strand of malice. This was the evil people who had resided here earlier. Gu Hai's group of people entered the valley, most of them with fierce eyes and not much fear. All of them were a group of wicked and ruthless people in general, gloomily surveying the 4 directions. Ha! Snap! The black-robed man of the Great Fenggang flicked his whip and droned. "Everyone come over and gather. Quick!" Clap! In the valley, the wicked people, however, were very obedient in general, gathering together very quickly. Very quickly. A group of black-robed men looked on with cold eyes, patrolling the 4 directions. In the twinkling of an eye, 4,000 wicked people had already come. The movement is very clever. After coming, immediately stood into a queue in general, very neat. And there were 10 people who came more slowly. HMPH, so slow. Good ah. "The 10 of you will go to the Colosseum," the black-robed man in the lead said with a glare in his eyes. "No, Senior, I just had an upset stomach. Senior, I just went to the Colosseum and managed to come back alive. My body is seriously injured, so I'm slow." "Me too, Senior. My whole body is injured." The 10 villains immediately begged for mercy. HMPH, cuff them. The leader black-clothed man's eyes glared, and he simply ignored them. Turning his eyes, the other men in black quickly stepped forward and roasted the 10 with handcuffs. But the 10 did not dare to resist in general. "Remove the handcuffs and shackles from this new 100 people," the leader black-clothed man said. Yes, the crowd of black-clothed men quickly removed the handcuffs and shackles from Gu Hai and the others. At once, the whole body was much more relaxed. The leader black-clothed man coldly looked at Gu Hai and the others and said, "I don't care how you were in the past, but when you come to my Dafenggang, you have to follow orders like a dog, or else we'll take your lives at any time." The abusive words of the leader black-clothed man caused the newly arrived 100 people to instantly show their anger. "Who are you calling a dog?" a new arrival shouted in defiance. The old villains around them revealed a cold smile. Snap! Steeply, a whip was lashed onto that person. The whip even had a large amount of true chi attached to it. And a whip was lashed out, instantly slicing that person's waist off. Blood was spilled all over the place. The new arrivals in the surroundings immediately changed their faces, clenched their fists, and didn't dare to push back anymore. "When I said you are dogs, that was to lift you up. Don't be ignorant of the rules," the leader black-robed man said coldly. The crowd no longer bunked back. "Everyone has a number. Next, stay here at ease and wait for the number to be called. Come out for me," the man in black in the lead said in a cold voice. Turning his head, the man in black looked at a group of old villains and coldly said, "This group is new. You teach them the rules." All the villains didn't dare to say more. "Let's go," the leader black-clothed man said coldly. Leading a group of black-robed men and the 10 unlucky villains, he slowly stepped out of the valley. The newly arrived 100 looked at the 4,000 villains and were not afraid, thinking that there would be a conflict between the old and the new. But the 4,000 wicked people who had just stood in a neat and tidy manner slowly dispersed. Merely looking viciously at the newcomers, they ignored them. Teach them the rules. No one was lazy to teach them. The 100 villains looked at each other in dismay, but at this moment they didn't say much, and each dispersed, finding a place to rest first. Gu Hai's 3 naturally gathered together and sat under a secluded boulder. This group of old evildoers, but they didn't look for trouble or Chen Chonchen was a bit puzzled. Why would they look for trouble? Gu Hai shook his head and said, "There's no fight of interests. As long as one has a bit of brain, they won't be looking for trouble for nothing. Besides, everyone's cultivation is sealed. They are all just mortals. It wouldn't be worth it to die in a fight here," Gao Xianzi explained. "Oh," Chen Chonchen nodded. The 3 of them, Gu Hai, sat in a secluded place, sizing up the surrounding villains, while the surrounding villains were also sizing them up. No one had good intentions in their eyes. They were all filled with malice. "Sure enough, it's the Valley of Evil," Gu Hai said coldly with his eyes narrowed slightly. "Gao Xianzi, the Earth Helmsman token. It's still there, right?" Gu Hai asked in a deep voice. "Yes, my lord. We searched all over our bodies. Everything was searched. Only the soles of our shoes were not searched. The token was hidden inside. The item is still there," Gao Xianzi explained. Gu Hai nodded. "Keep it first." "Yes, my lord. I heard that if you enter the Evil Man Valley, you won't be able to get out. Everyone has their cultivation sealed. What are we going to do?" Chen Chonchen was worried. "Let me see this seal," Gu Hai said in a deep voice. Closing his eyes, Gu Hai's mind sank into his dantian. Buzz. As if a greyish energy isolated the dantian, Gu Hai simply couldn't probe everything in the dantian, and the true chi within the dantian couldn't be mobilized at all. After a while, Gu Hai opened his eyes, his face gloomy. "Helmsman, I'm at the Jindan realm, and I can't break the seal," Chen Chonchen said with an ugly face. "Now, there are 2 major problems before us. One is the seal, and the other is this bronze mask on our heads," Gao Xianzi said with an ugly face. "Look, someone is trying to escape." Chen Chonchen's eyes lit up and said. However, he saw a newly arrived villain in the distance, who was currently in the middle of trying to climb a rock. Although his cultivation was sealed, his movements were extremely sharp. Little by little, he climbed towards a peak, as if he wanted to climb over the peak to escape from the Valley of Villains. That person escaped, but the surrounding villains did not block the general. 4,000 old villains watched with cold eyes, occasionally revealing a cold smile. It was seen that the man quickly climbed halfway up the mountain. The head went up a little further. Buzz. High in the sky, a blue ripple in general steeply appeared, as if a transparent cover covered the entire valley, and only when it was touched would the blue light appear. Boom. That evil person didn't even have time to send out a miserable scream. The bronze mask on his head exploded, and in the twinkling of an eye, even his head was blown away. Boom. That headless body crashed down. Hiss. The newly arrived villains all sucked in cold air. This bronze mask, when you put it on, you can't take it off. Forcibly take it off. It will explode, and if this escape triggers the mechanism, it will also explode. There's no escape. There's no escape. Chen Chanshan's face revealed a look of panic. Calm down, Gu Hai said in a cold voice. My lord, Chen Chanshan bitterly looked towards Gu Hai. If the mask can be put on, there is a way to take it off. Calm down, there is always a way. If one lives, there will always be a chance. It's only when one dies that there is no chance, Gu Hai said in a deep voice. Yes, Chen Chanshan, and Gao Xianzi answered. The night was silent. Gu Hai, Chen Chonchen, and Gao Xianzi sat quietly in the corner, trying hard to communicate their true qi. But the seal was too bizarre and everything was ineffective. In the dead of night, Gu Hai took out a bit of food from the token's small space for the three to carefully devour. After all, now that their cultivation was sealed, they were no different from mortals. Although their physique was strong and they could still hold out for a long time, but Gu Hai didn't want to become weak. Early morning hours on the second day, boom! Steeply, a large number of rats fell from the sky. It was cast down from above the valley. Squeak, squeak, squeak. In midair, the rats let out squeaky, miserable sounds, while in the valley, the 4,000 old villains' eyes instantly lit up. Boom! All the old villains got busy and quickly rushed towards the throwing rats. Snap! The first person to snatch the rat immediately opened his mouth and put the rat into his mouth, chewing it desperately. Chen Chanchen's face changed. This is food for the wicked people, rats. Quickly grab it. Gu Hai's face sank as he said. Huh, my lord, we're eating rats. Chen Chanchen's face changed. Eating it or not is one thing, grabbing it or not is another, Gu Hai said in a cold voice. Boom! Gao Xianzi immediately carried out the order and quickly went to grab it. Gu Hai also jumped into the center of the square and snatched towards the falling rat. Chen Chonchen followed closely behind, his face unsightly. Perhaps after staying for a long time, the crowd of villains were no longer repulsed by eating rats raw. The most important thing was to be able to keep their strength and live longer, alive. All had a chance. Dead? There is nothing. In the blink of an eye, Gao Xianzi had already snatched a handful of rats. Boom! Steeply a man blasted at Gao Xianzi, but it was a Scarface man. Gao Xianzi stumbled and fell off, and the dead rats in his hands fell out. The Scarface man's face was hideous, and he suddenly pounced on a group of dead rats. Seek death! Gu Hai suddenly appeared and punched away. Scarface's face looked vicious as he clashed with Gu Hai's fist. Boom! With a hard impact, Gu Hai's foot violently stepped on a stone and stabilized his stance, while that Scarface suddenly fell back 7 or 8 steps. Gu Hai, after all, came from cultivating external martial arts, and it was naturally hard to meet an opponent just by sparring his physical body. Kid, are you looking for death? Scarface said in a vicious voice. What is not yours is never yours. How do you call yourself, Your Excellency? Gu Hai said in a cold voice. Gu Hai's punch just now, but it caused all the evil people around who were grabbing the rat meat to shrink their pupils and look at Gu Hai coldly. Scarface revealed a cold smile. Remember, I'll be Scar, kid, I'll remember you. Gu Hai smiled coldly and ignored it, returning to one side with Chen Chonchen and Gao Xianzi with 10 dead rats. Gu Hai could feel Scar constantly twisting his head to look in the distance, with that grim gaze, choosing people to devour in general. All around, those who had grabbed the rat meat were chewing and gnawing on it bloodily. The crowd of villains only had one thought: to live.